This is an overview of the drawn objects in SlopeCharts, which is by far the most used function, absolutely vital to the program. And these are normally shown at the very top in this bar because you can change the contents of that bar with various menu selections. If you ever need to force it back, you just choose Drawing Tools from the menu, and there they are. The default tool is really just a pointer. It's known as zoom here because you can just drag over any portion of the chart to zoom in to it. But the rest of them draw explicit objects on the chart. They're retained on your account. And even though the tools are all quite different, they have several properties that are absolutely similar to one another. And so I'll illustrate this, but before I do, I just want to emphasize that in the Preferences box, there is an item, Stay in Drawn Object Mode. And what this means is that if you are unchecked on that, you draw one object at a time. So, if I draw one trend line like so, then it draws it and it immediately reverts back to my simple pointer tool. However, if you tend to want to draw lots of the same shape and expressly go back to the cursor tool, then you could change this to Stay in Drawn Object Mode like so. And that way, and what I'm going to draw is not meaningful in charts, I'm just doing it for the sake of example. At this point, you could just draw object after object after object, and until such time as you go back to the cursor, it'll stay in that particular mode. Now, while I'm here, I'll just illustrate one item, which is you can right-click on any object and do things to it. In this case, I'm going to delete these given objects because they're just clutter on the screen. But on any given object, you can modify it. You can delete it, you can delete them all, you can change its style, you can move it, and so forth. So on this particular chart, I've already drawn a few objects, and one of them here is a trend line. And so what I'll do to illustrate, I'll draw another trend line. I'll zoom into this chunk of the chart to make it a little easier for me. And I will simply choose the tool I want, trend line, and I point to the first place where I want it to draw, and it'll sort of magnetically grab the anchor for that when I click. So I don't have to have exactly pixel perfect pointing. If it's in the proximity of what I'm after, it'll just grab onto it. And then I can drag this around until I find another point that I would like for the second anchor. So you can see how I just sort of snatched it away from me like so. It feels a bit like gravity as you're moving this about. And then I can click again to terminate it there. So this is a trend line I just drew. And as I said, when you right click on an object, you can do things to it. You can change its style. And what the style is varies from object to object. In this case, I can change the color, the opacity, that is how much you can see through it, the weight, like I could have an extremely thick trend line like so, what the pattern is, whether it is by default extended to the right, extended to the left, and so on. And so if I change all of these things to my liking, I can check here, save as default trendline style. So if you always want, or almost always want, dotted blue thick trend lines that extend only to the left, then why go through that every single time? You can simply establish that as your default style. The next drawing tool is a channel, and I don't see anything on the screen which is particularly channel-like, but I'll approximate one just to make the point. In this instance, a channel is basically two trend lines, so I draw one trend line like so, and then I have another trend line and a midline exactly between those two, which follows along as I'm dragging. That actually isn't too terrible of a channel now that I see it. And so there I've drawn a very nice channel, and here again you could right click on this and change things about it. I'll also mention when you mouse over a drawn object, it'll tell you what it can about it. In this case, the angle and where it starts. This is getting a bit messy, so I'm just going to delete that and also delete this kind of junky trend line that we've got right here. Moving on is the horizontal, and this is the simplest item of all because all it does is draw a horizontal line, therefore it only needs one anchor point. So I click to begin, and it meanders up and down as I drag, and right there, actually, you know what? And this, I made a mistake, but I didn't do so on purpose, but I'm glad I did because it'll show you that that's a little bit wrong to my eyes. You see over here how the price penetrates a bit below it. I'd rather anchor it to that line over there. Oh, you know what? I forgot that we are in this, I'm not accustomed to staying in drawn object mode, so I behaved in a way that I normally do, which is assuming that it's not there. We're going to get rid of that junk line. I'm going to select that, and move that anchor just a skosh, like so. And now it's grabbed onto the proper line, the proper anchor point. So what I was illustrating there is how you can change the location of a particular object. Now, the next three drawn objects are actually kind of a family. This rectangle, oval, and the arc. And what it is about these, which makes them family-like, is they are expressly for the purpose of highlighting. In other words, you want to highlight a particular portion of the chart, and what makes them a family is that they can have text within them. And so, as we go over here, I'll choose, for example, the oval, and I could circle any portion here, and there's the highlight. And if I want, I can also have text there, and I'll just put something here like reversal pattern. I can also choose whether or not I want to make that note public, and so in this case I have. I was showing earlier in the preferences how you could alter something, in this case stay in drawn object mode to affect the drawn objects. There's another one that is also in preferences, text prompt for highlight tools. And if that's checked, what happens is that every time you use a highlight tool, be it the oval or the arc or the rectangle, it'll automatically ask you if you would like a text note in that. I don't tend to put text with my objects, so I just leave that off. But if you normally, when you're drawing things like these arcs, if you want to put notes in, you can choose that as well. So I just showed you the oval. The rectangle is obviously very simple too. You just click, drag, and click, and there's a rectangle. And the arc is probably one of my favorites because it's beautiful for topping and basing patterns. I've drawn a couple of arcs right here. In the case of an arc, you simply click, and then drag, and that half oval comes along for the ride. Now the final two drawn objects are the Fibonacci Retracement and the Andrews Pitchfork. The Fibonacci Retracement just uses a couple of anchor points too. So what I do here is I click once and I drag, and then I click once again to drag to the other extreme. It automatically draws the retracement levels based on Fibonacci numbers. And as I'm going here, I'm deleting these one by one because I don't want an absolute mess on the screen. And the very last one is Andrews Pitchfork, which is a little bit of akin to a channel. It's a different way of illustrating a horizontal trend. So in this case, I click once and click again, and now, as you can see here, we've got this. It looks a bit much like a fondue fork going here, but we can click a third time to finish the Andrews Pitchfork. So just to review, the drawn objects are all up here. They can each be moved, deleted, recolored, and the parameters, the properties of any given object can be saved as a default style. And because the more you use the product, the more you use SlopeCharts, the more customized it's going to get to your style of drawing. And therefore, you'll find you spend less and less and less time because A, you're going through the hard work of drawing past instances on your charts, and those will stay there forever. And secondly, you have preserved the default properties that you tend to like on your drawn objects. So it'll get easier and easier with every passing trading week. And that is it.